What happens when two iconic personalities, known for their outspoken nature, clash on live television? The atmosphere in the studio turned electric as the conversation between Joy Behar and Kelly Clarkson quickly escalated into something no one expected. The conversation, which began as a casual chat, became one of the most talked-about moments in daytime television history. Before we dive into the dramatic exchange, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments who you agree with, because this debate will make you think. It all started like any other episode. Kelly Clarkson was scheduled to promote her latest album and share her journey in the music industry. The panel was in high spirits and the audience buzzed with excitement. What seemed like a lighthearted conversation soon took a sharp turn when the topic of authenticity in the entertainment industry was introduced. Joy leaned forward, her expression curious. "Kelly, you've been very open about your struggles, your divorce, and your experience as a working mom. Do you ever feel that your vulnerability gets used against you in this industry?" Kelly, always poised, responded calmly. "Vulnerability is my strength, Joy. It's what has built my career. When I sing about heartbreak, it's because I've lived it. When I talk about my life with 3 kids, it's because I'm living that chaos every day." The panel nodded in agreement, but Joy wasn't satisfied. "Right. But there's a difference between being authentic and performing authenticity. Today, everyone has a brand. Even vulnerability has become part of that brand," she countered, her tone now sharper. The studio quieted. Kelly's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Wait, are you saying that my pain is a marketing strategy?" Kelly asked, her voice calm but with a new edge. Joy gestured with her hands, trying to clarify. "I'm not saying that about you specifically, Kelly, but look at the industry. You've made millions talking about your divorce and personal struggles. That's the reality of the business. You're not just sharing your pain. You're using it as content." Kelly paused, her expression growing serious. "I don't do it for ratings. I do it because I get messages from people telling me my story helps them. That's real. That's why I share it." Joy wasn't done. "But let's face it, you do get paid for it. Your authenticity is part of your brand, Kelly, and that's where the lines get blurry." The debate continued to heat up. Kelly, visibly frustrated but holding her ground, responded, "Look, my authenticity isn't just part of my brand. It's who I am. When I share my struggles, it's not a marketing tactic. It's because I want people to know they're not alone." Joy's eyes narrowed, her voice growing sharper. "But don't you see? Authenticity is the new currency in this industry. It's commodified. What you call being real is now part of the entertainment machine. Everyone is selling vulnerability. Everyone's a brand." Kelly's frustration showed as she leaned forward, her voice rising. "Just because something is popular doesn't mean it's fake. I'm not selling my emotions, Joy. I'm sharing them. And there's a difference." Joy raised an eyebrow, not backing down. "But that's exactly what the industry does. It sells emotions. It curates personas, Kelly. Even if it's real for you, it's still a product for your audience." The tension in the room was thick. The other hosts were silent, unsure of how to mediate this escalating conflict. Whoopi stepped in, trying to diffuse the situation. "I think what Joy might be saying is that in the age of social media, everything is branded, even vulnerability. But Kelly, I get it. Your story is real, and it helps people." Kelly's voice softened but remained firm. "I agree that the industry has its flaws, but don't paint me with the same brush. I'm not here to sell pain. I'm here to connect with people. I've been open about my life because I know it can help others." Joy crossed her arms, still unconvinced. "You're connecting, but you're also selling that connection, Kelly. And that's what the industry does. It turns real emotions into content." The debate had taken a personal turn, and the studio atmosphere felt charged with tension. Kelly's eyes, once calm, now held a hint of defensiveness, and Joy, ever the provocateur, showed no signs of retreating. The rest of the panel was quiet, watching the exchange unfold, unsure of how to intervene or if they should even try. Kelly took a deep breath before responding. "I've been in this business long enough to know that everything can be twisted into a brand, a narrative. But you know what, Joy? When I share my story, I'm not playing a part. This is my reality. And what I've learned is that being authentic has helped people connect with me. That's why I do it. If that's something the industry can monetize, so be it. But it doesn't make it fake. Joy's face remained impassive as she listened. But that's the problem, she countered. The lines between what's real and what's manufactured have gotten so blurred that it's hard to tell where authenticity ends and where the performance begins. Everyone's so caught up in the image that we forget about the actual person behind it. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. You're selling your authenticity, just like everyone else. The silence in the studio was deafening. Kelly's frustration had grown, but so had her resolve. I'm not selling anything, Joy. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I've made it clear from day one that I'm real with people. I'm not going to apologize for that. And I'm not going to let anyone question the truth of what I share just because it happens to fit into a narrative. Joy shook her head. It's not about questioning your truth, Kelly. It's about acknowledging that the industry has commodified everything, even the things that are supposed to be the most personal. You think you're sharing your truth, but what if it's just a part of the machine? Kelly clenched her jaw, clearly holding back her emotions. I get that, I do. But I'm trying to remind people that we're all more than just the content we create. We're all more than the image we put out there. Just because I share my life doesn't mean I've sold out. It just means I'm trying to make something real in an industry that's anything but. Joy remained firm. That's where we disagree. The industry takes what's real and turns it into something that can be marketed. It's all about the narrative. And in today's world, your narrative is a commodity. For a moment, Kelly was quiet. Then, looking directly at Joy, she spoke with a clarity that cut through the tension in the room. You're not wrong about the industry being flawed, Joy. But what I'm doing is trying to connect with people on a real, human level. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the way I connect with my audience is anything less than genuine. As the tension continued to rise, it was clear that neither Joy nor Kelly was willing to back down. Both women had dug in their heels, each defending their perspective with conviction. But the more they spoke, the more it became clear that this wasn't just a debate about the industry. It was about their core beliefs. Kelly, visibly exhausted but resolute, leaned forward. I'm not saying the industry is perfect. Trust me, I know, but I can only control how I show up in it. And when I'm honest about my struggles, when I talk about my life, yes, it's personal, but it's also real. People need that. And I won't apologize for helping others feel seen. If that means I'm doing my job well, so be it. But it doesn't make it less genuine. Joy crossed her arms, taking a moment to digest Kelly's words. You're right about one thing, Kelly. People do need that connection. But here's where I'm coming from. Today's entertainment world thrives on that connection, that emotional appeal. Everyone wants to be seen as real, as authentic, and that's exactly why it gets commodified. It's easy to see how your vulnerability becomes part of the show. It becomes part of your brand. And in that sense, it's hard to say where the line is between being genuine and just playing a role. Kelly shot back, frustration creeping into her voice. So now you're telling me that my emotions, my real emotions, are just part of some show? That the things I talk about, the struggles I've faced, are just content to be consumed by the audience? I'm not performing for ratings, Joy. I'm sharing what's real for me, in the hope that someone out there can feel less alone. And that's what this industry does. It takes personal stories and turns them into content. But that doesn't make them fake. Joy nodded slowly, clearly processing Kelly's words. I hear what you're saying, Kelly, and maybe I've been too harsh. But we can't ignore the fact that the industry has changed. It's no longer just about talent. It's about selling an image that people want to connect with, yes, but one that's been packaged and curated to perfection. And you're right, your vulnerability isn't fake. But it's still a part of the industry, and that's the problem. Kelly's gaze softened slightly. I get that, but it's a part of the industry because I've chosen to share my life, not because I'm trying to market it. It's hard to draw that line, I admit that. But I know that when I'm open about my challenges, it's not just to get more viewers. It's because that openness has helped people. And that's where the real value is. The entire room was silent now, as both women locked eyes. the air thick with unresolved tension. No one else spoke, allowing the weight of their words to settle. After a long pause, Kelly finally broke the silence, her voice quieter but firm. "You can call it content, Joy. You can call it branding. But for me, it's about connecting. That's what keeps me grounded. It's not about exploiting myself. It's about finding meaning in this mess of a world." Joy sat back in her chair, contemplating Kelly's words. "Maybe I've been too quick to judge. Maybe I haven't fully understood where you're coming from. But that's the thing with this industry. It's hard to tell what's real anymore." The conversation had taken a sharp turn, and there was a sense of palpable frustration hanging in the air. Both women were holding their ground, but it was clear that something deeper was happening. This wasn't just about the entertainment industry anymore. It was about their core values and perceptions of authenticity. Joy, not backing down, shot back, "I'm not saying you're faking, Kelly, but let's be real. The industry loves authenticity because it's profitable. Vulnerability is the new commodity. You say you're just sharing your truth, but what happens when your truth becomes part of a larger narrative? That's the slippery slope." Kelly's voice tightened. "And that's where you're wrong, Joy. Just because the industry might commodify something doesn't mean the act of sharing your story is inherently fake. Yes, I get paid for it. Yes, it helps my career. But that's not the point. The point is that people connect with it. It helps people. And that's what matters. I'm not using my struggles for profit. I'm sharing them because I want to." The tension in the room escalated, but Kelly stood firm. Her eyes softened for a moment as she spoke again. "I get that the industry can twist things, but that doesn't change my intention. When I talk about my divorce or my challenges, it's not for a show. It's for the people who need to hear it. It's for those who feel like they're struggling alone." Joy, listening intently, took a moment to pause before responding. "I see where you're coming from, Kelly, but that doesn't change the fact that the industry, and maybe even your audience, has expectations. They want you to be vulnerable. They want that connection, and that expectation turns your vulnerability into a brand." Kelly met Joy's gaze. "And what's wrong with that? If people find strength in my vulnerability, if it helps them feel seen, then I don't see the harm. I'm not selling an image. I'm sharing my life." The silence between them hung heavy as the tension between their opposing views seemed to settle. Whoopi finally spoke, her voice calm but firm, trying to mediate the conversation. "Look, we're all part of this industry. We're all navigating it in our own way. But at the end of the day, it's about being true to yourself." Kelly nodded, her frustration ebbing. "Exactly. And that's what I'm doing. I'm being true to myself." Joy didn't fully agree, but she nodded in acknowledgement. "Maybe we'll never see eye to eye on this, but I respect your conviction." The conversation had reached a crucial moment. The tension was still high, but there was a sense that both women were beginning to realize something important. That their clash wasn't about who was right or wrong, but about the complexity of navigating authenticity in today's media-driven world. Joy, still maintaining her position, spoke carefully. "I get it, Kelly. I'm not blind to the fact that you're doing something real. But here's the thing. The industry isn't built to celebrate authenticity. It's built to capitalize on it. The moment something becomes a trend, it loses its purity." Kelly, despite the back and forth, took a deep breath and softened. "Maybe that's true, but the people I'm connecting with, they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for something genuine. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. I'm just being honest, sharing what I've gone through, and if that helps someone else, then I think that's the best thing I can do." For a moment, there was quiet. Joy, often quick to respond, seemed to take a step back, reflecting on Kelly's words. "I can't argue with that," she said finally. "If your authenticity helps others, that's powerful. But I still wonder, how much of that is truly yours, and how much of it is what the industry has made you think you should share?" Kelly's face softened, her voice quieter but filled with conviction. "It's mine, Joy. It's always been mine. What I share comes from my heart. I can't control how it's marketed, how it's packaged, but I can control why I share it. And that's where the truth lies." Joy nodded slowly, her expression softening slightly. "I hear you. Maybe, just maybe, there's a middle ground here. Maybe authenticity is both a personal truth and a public performance, and that doesn't make it any less real. Kelly gave a small smile, a sign that the conversation, though intense, had reached a point of mutual understanding. I think we're closer than we realize. Whoopi, sensing the opportunity to calm things down, interjected with a light-hearted tone. Well, look at that. Maybe we've made a little progress, but at least we know that tough conversations can still lead to some real insights. The rest of the panel nodded, and the room, once tense, began to feel a little more relaxed. What started as a heated confrontation now felt more like a shared moment of growth. The room had settled into an unexpected quiet. Kelly and Joy, both tired from the intensity of the debate, now seemed to have reached an unspoken understanding. The rawness of their words had brought them closer to a reality that neither had fully embraced at the beginning of their conversation. Kelly broke the silence first, her tone more reflective. You know, I never really thought about it that way, Joy. Maybe I've been so focused on sharing my story, I didn't realize how much the industry itself shapes that narrative. It's not always in my control, and that's something I need to acknowledge. Joy, though still skeptical, nodded in agreement. It's tough. The industry is a machine, and even the most genuine intentions can be swept up in it. But maybe that doesn't take away from the truth behind what you're doing. At the end of the day, it's about how you connect with people. Kelly smiled slightly. Exactly. I might not control the narrative, but I do control my intentions. And as long as my heart is in it, that's all that matters to me. The tension in the room had lifted, replaced by a sense of mutual respect. The two women, who had once been so opposed, now seemed to share a deeper understanding of the complexities of their roles in the media. Whoopi, seeing the shift, gently chimed in. This is what real conversation looks like. Messy, uncomfortable, but honest. Both of you have been vulnerable, and that's something we don't see enough of in the industry. It's okay to question, to disagree, but it's also important to listen. The rest of the panel nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. It was clear that something had changed, not just between Kelly and Joy, but within the entire room. As the conversation slowed, both Joy and Kelly seemed to settle into a space of mutual respect, though their perspectives remained distinct. The audience, too, had shifted from tense silence to a more reflective mood, feeling the weight of the discussion but also the emotional vulnerability that had unfolded on stage. Kelly spoke first, her voice softer now. You know, I think what's been hard for me is that I've always prided myself on being honest, and hearing you question my authenticity really stung. But I get it now. I've been so focused on being real that I didn't stop to think about how the industry shapes that. It's not always about just being me. It's about the business behind it. Joy nodded, her earlier defensiveness beginning to fade. I can see that. And it's not easy, especially in today's world where everything is marketed, even authenticity. But I think what we're both realizing is that there's room for both. There's room for personal truth and the reality of the industry. It's not black and white. Kelly gave a small smile, clearly appreciative of the shift in tone. Exactly. And I don't think sharing our struggles, our vulnerabilities, makes us less real. It makes us human. We just need to remember that what we put out into the world is part of a much bigger picture. Whoopi, ever the mediator, smiled at the turn of the conversation. You both took a hard topic, a tough conversation, and turned it into something meaningful. That's the beauty of real dialogue. It's not about who's right or wrong, but about understanding each other's truths. The audience, clearly moved by the transformation in the conversation, clapped, acknowledging the rawness and honesty they had just witnessed. As the conversation came to a close, there was a palpable sense of growth in the room. The intensity had faded, replaced by a deeper understanding between Kelly and Joy. Both women had come to realize that their positions weren't so far apart. After all, they simply viewed the complexities of the entertainment industry from different angles. Kelly, her voice calm, turned to Joy. You know, I think I've been too defensive throughout this conversation. I've been so focused on protecting my authenticity that I didn't take a moment to understand the bigger picture you were pointing out. The industry isn't just about us, it's about what it does to the stories we tell. Joy looked at Kelly with a soft smile. It's not easy, Kelly. The industry thrives on selling vulnerability, and it's hard to separate that from personal truth. But I see now that you're not just performing for the cameras. You're doing what feels true to you, and that's what matters. The other hosts, who had been quiet observers of the conversation, finally spoke up, offering their thoughts on what they had just witnessed. Whoopi's voice, as always, brought the room back to center. What we've seen today isn't just a debate about authenticity. It's a conversation about what it means to be real in an industry that doesn't always reward that. Both of you showed us that authenticity can be a strength, even when the world tries to turn it into a brand. Alyssa chimed in with a gentle tone. It's important to remember that everyone has their own journey. What Kelly shared today was real to her, just as Joy's perspective comes from years of experience. It's okay to disagree, but it's more important to listen and understand. The room, once filled with tension, now had a sense of calm. The conversation that had started as a heated debate had evolved into a moment of genuine understanding. Kelly and Joy, though they had not fully agreed, had learned something valuable from each other. The emotional rawness they had shared with the audience felt real, and it left everyone in the studio reflecting on their own experiences with authenticity. Kelly, looking at Joy, took a deep breath. I think what I've learned today is that it's okay to question everything, even the things that feel most true to us. The industry will always have its expectations, but what I can control is the integrity behind what I share. Joy nodded, her voice softer now. And I've realized that not everything in the industry is about manipulation or control. Sometimes people really are just trying to be themselves, even if the world wants to turn them into a product. There's a fine line between being real and being packaged, but maybe that's something we all have to navigate. The other hosts, sensing that the conversation had reached a moment of clarity, looked around the room. Whoopi, who had been quiet for much of the exchange, finally spoke up. This conversation wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We saw two strong women, disagree and then listen to each other. That's what real growth looks like. As the audience clapped, Kelly turned to Joy with a final thought. I appreciate you, Joy. Even though we didn't agree on everything, I respect where you're coming from. And I think in the end we both want the same thing, to stay true to ourselves. Joy smiled back. Yeah, we might just be more alike than we thought.